Captain William "Bull" Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the sensor readings with the kind of cold focus that had earned him his nickname during the Martian conflicts. 3 years commanding humanity's most advanced battleship, and he'd never seen anything like what was spreading across his tactical display. The alien fleet stretched across space like a metallic constellation, ships of impossible geometry that seemed to bend light around their hulls. "Sir, they're hailing us again," Communications Officer Rodriguez said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. The kid was good, but this was his first deep space assignment, and Harrison could see the tremor in his hands as they hovered over the console. "Put it through," Harrison replied, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. He'd fought pirates, rebels, and corporate mercenaries, but this was different. This was humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, and they'd come armed to the teeth. The main screen flickered, revealing a creature that defied easy description. Tall, elegant, with features that seemed almost crystalline in their perfection. When it spoke, the translator struggled to render its melodic tones into human speech. "Primitive vessel of the third planet, you will surrender your ship for inspection. Your species shows promise, but your aggressive nature requires correction. Submit peacefully, and your crew will be processed with minimal discomfort." Harrison felt something cold settle in his chest. 22 years in the service had taught him to read between the lines, and everything about this alien's tone screamed arrogance. They weren't asking for surrender. They were demanding it, like a superior speaking to a disobedient child. "This is Captain Harrison of the United Earth ship Defiant," he replied, stepping closer to the screen. "We're prepared to discuss peaceful contact between our species, but we don't surrender to anyone. Not pirates, not rebels, and sure as hell not to aliens who think they can waltz into our system and make demands." The alien's expression shifted, something like amusement flickering across its crystalline features. "Your defiance is quaint. We are the hierarchy, child species. We have guided the development of 17 civilizations across this galactic arm. Your weapons are primitive, your technology crude. You have perhaps 20 vessels in your entire fleet, while we command thousands. Logic dictates surrender." Around him, Harrison could feel the tension radiating from his crew. These were good people, the best humanity had to offer, but they were scared. Hell, he was scared too. The Defiant was powerful by human standards, but the alien fleet outnumbered them 50-1. Any rational commander would be looking for a way to negotiate, to find some middle ground that kept his crew alive. But William Harrison had never been accused of being entirely rational. He'd earned his reputation in the asteroid belt, where corporate raiders thought they could intimidate independent miners into submission. He'd shown them the error of their thinking with a combination of superior tactics and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness that had become legendary in the outer colonies. "Tactical, give me a full analysis of their formation," he ordered, his eyes never leaving the alien commander. "Weapons, I want all batteries charged and ready. Engineering, how's our reactor output?" "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Walsh said from the tactical station, "their ships are maintaining a standard blockade formation, but they're spread thin trying to cover all approach vectors. If we concentrate our fire—" "Captain," the alien interrupted, clearly having monitored their communications. "You cannot seriously be considering combat? Your single vessel against our entire expeditionary force? This is not bravery, it is suicide." Harrison smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. His crew had seen that smile before, usually right before he did something that would either go down in history or get them all killed. Sometimes both. "You know what I find interesting about bullies?" he said, his voice carrying the flat, dangerous tone that made even veteran Marines step carefully around him. "They always assume everyone else thinks the same way they do, You've got more ships, better technology, probably weapons that can crack planets, but you made one critical mistake. The alien leaned forward, curiosity replacing its earlier amusement. And what mistake is that, primitive? You assumed we'd be impressed. Harrison's smile widened. Rodriguez, cut the transmission. Tactical, target their flagship. All batteries, prepare to fire on my mark. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as his crew executed their orders with the precision of a well-oiled machine. 3 years of drills, combat exercises, and real engagements had forged them into something special, and Harrison felt a fierce pride watching them work. Sir, Walsh reported, target acquired, all weapons locked and ready. Harrison looked out at the alien fleet, at the impossible odds, at what any sane person would call certain death. But sanity was overrated, and he'd built his entire career on doing things that couldn't be done. Fire. The Defiant shuddered as every weapon system fired simultaneously, a coordinated symphony of human engineering and raw destructive power that lit up the darkness of space like a newborn star. Harrison gripped the command chair's armrest, watching the tactical display as their ordnance streaked toward the alien flagship at velocities that defied casual observation. Railgun slugs moving at significant fractions of light speed, plasma torpedoes burning white-hot trails through the void, and the experimental particle beam weapons that had cost more than most planetary defense budgets combined. The alien flagship's shields flared brilliant purple, absorbing the initial salvo with what appeared to be contemptuous ease. For a moment, Harrison felt the weight of his decision crushing down on him, the very real possibility that he'd just condemned his crew to death for nothing more than his own stubborn pride. Then the second wave hit, and the third, overlapping fields of fire concentrated on a single point with mathematical precision that would have made the tactical computers proud if they'd been capable of pride. The shields buckled. Not dramatically, not with the explosive failure that human shields experienced when overloaded, but with a kind of cascading collapse that rippled across the flagship's hull like water disturbing a still pond. The railgun slugs punched through, and Harrison watched with grim satisfaction as sections of the alien vessel's elegant hull simply ceased to exist, vaporized by kinetic energy that had nowhere to go but through. Direct hits across multiple sections, Walsh called out, his voice sharp with professional focus despite the situation's insanity. Their flagship is venting atmosphere and showing power fluctuations. Jesus Christ, sir, we actually hurt them. The alien fleet's response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of ships broke formation, converging on the Defiant with speeds that human vessels couldn't match. Energy weapons Harrison had no name for lanced through space, and he felt the deck plates vibrate as their own shields absorbed impacts that would have gutted lesser ships. Evasive pattern Delta 7, Harrison ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. Keep us moving. Make them work for every shot. Weapons, continuous fire, spread your targets across their formation. I want them confused about our priorities. The Defiant was a battleship, massive and powerful, but Chief Petty Officer Nina Kowalski flew her like a fighter, twisting the ship through three-dimensional maneuvers that pushed the inertial dampeners to their limits. Harrison's stomach lurched as the ship rolled inverted, presenting fresh shield sections to the incoming fire while their weapons continued their relentless assault. He designed this dance himself, working with his senior staff through countless simulations. The doctrine that had governed human naval combat for centuries assumed you'd be fighting other humans with similar technology and predictable tactics. But Harrison had always been paranoid, always planning for the scenario everyone said would never happen. Alien contact, superior technology, overwhelming numbers. The answer, he'd concluded, was simple brutality. hit them so hard and so fast that their technological advantage became irrelevant in the face of sheer aggressive audacity. "Sir, incoming transmission from the alien flagship," Rodriguez said. "They're demanding we cease fire immediately." "Tell them to get in line behind everyone else who's made demands of me," Harrison replied, watching another alien ship take critical damage from their particle beams. "How's our ammunition?" "Railguns at 70% capacity. Plasma torpedoes at 85%. The particle beams are running hot, but engineering says they can maintain current output for another 15 minutes before we risk thermal damage." 15 minutes. In the grand scheme of a space battle, that was nothing. But Harrison had learned in the Martian conflicts that battles weren't won by the side with better equipment. They were won by the side that kept fighting when any rational person would have quit. The tactical display showed the alien formation adapting, learning from their initial surprise. They were good. Harrison had to give them that. Professional warriors who'd probably been conquering primitive species since before humanity invented the wheel. But they'd gotten comfortable with their superiority, lazy with their assumptions about how inferior races would respond to their power. "Target their communication ships," Harrison ordered suddenly, seeing the pattern in their movements. "Those smaller vessels hanging back from the main engagement, they're coordinating their fleet." Walsh's fingers danced across his console. "Locked, that's actually brilliant, sir. If we disrupt their coordination, they'll have to fall back on the local ship-to-ship communication, which means response times measured in seconds instead of microseconds. Fire at will." The Defiant's weapons pivoted, targeting the vessels the aliens had assumed were safe behind their wall of warships. 3 torpedoes, launched with timing that spoke to Walsh's growing understanding of his captain's tactical philosophy, streaked through the gaps in the alien formation. The communication ship's shields were weaker, designed for their support role rather than frontline combat. They never stood a chance. The first torpedo vaporized its target completely. The second and third scored direct hits that left their ships tumbling through space, bleeding atmosphere and electromagnetic radiation from their ruptured hulls. And just like that, the alien fleet's coordinated assault dissolved into something more chaotic, more reactive, more human in its confusion. Harrison allowed himself a tight smile. "Now we're fighting on even ground. Kowalski, bring us about. I want a firing solution on their flagship again." "Sir, they're pulling back," Walsh reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. "The flagship is withdrawing behind their screening vessels." On the main screen, the alien commander reappeared. And this time there was no amusement in its crystalline features. Something else burned there. Something Harrison recognized because he'd seen it in mirrors after particularly brutal engagements. Respect, grudging and unwilling, but respect nonetheless. "Captain Harrison," the alien said, and the translator caught nuances in its tone that hadn't been there before. "You are either the bravest commander I have encountered in 3 centuries of service, or the most foolishly suicidal. Your vessel fights well, but you must see the mathematics of this situation. We still outnumber you 47-1. "Funny thing about mathematics," Harrison replied, moving to stand directly before the screen. "It assumes both sides are playing by the same rules. You came here expecting to intimidate a primitive species into submission. You thought we'd see your numbers and your technology and fold like amateurs, but we're not amateurs, and we're sure as hell not primitive." He gestured to the tactical display, making sure the alien could see what he was seeing. "You've lost 4 ships completely destroyed, another 7 critically damaged. My ship has taken hits, yes, but we're still fighting at full capacity. Now you're pulling back, trying to figure out how a single human vessel managed to bloody your nose when you had every advantage." The alien's expression was difficult to read, but something in its posture changed, stiffening with what might have been offense or recognition. "You speak as though you have won this engagement, Captain. You have merely survived the opening moves." "And you speak as though you're still confident of victory," Harrison countered. "But I can see it in whatever passes for your eyes. You're recalculating, aren't you? Wondering how many more ships you'll lose if you press the attack. Wondering if conquering humanity is worth the cost we'll extract from your precious hierarchy." The bridge had gone silent, his crew watching this psychological battle play out with the same intensity they'd brought to the physical one. Harrison could feel the weight of humanity's future pressing down on him, every word a potential disaster or triumph. "This is your final warning, Primitive," the alien said. But the word primitive had lost its earlier contempt. "Surrender now, or we will bring the full weight of our fleet against you." Harrison's smile turned cold and hard. "Come and take us then, but I promise you this. Every meter you advance will cost you blood and steel. And when word gets back to the rest of humanity about what happened here, we'll build 1,000 ships just like the Defiant. 10,000. We'll turn our entire species into a war machine dedicated to making sure no one ever speaks to us like children again." The alien commander stared at Harrison for what felt like an eternity, those crystalline features reflecting light in ways that made it impossible to read true intention. Then, without another word, the transmission cut to black. The tactical display showed the alien fleet holding position, neither advancing nor retreating, frozen in what Harrison recognized as the military equivalent of an existential crisis. "Sir, what do we do now?" Rodriguez asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter whatever fragile moment they'd created. Harrison didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing through possibilities, consequences, the cascading effects of every decision he might make in the next few seconds. He'd backed the aliens into a corner, challenged their entire world view about their place in the galaxy. That made them either very dangerous or very desperate, and he wasn't sure which was worse. "We wait," he finally said, settling back into his command chair with a casualness he absolutely didn't feel. "Maintain battle stations, but don't fire unless they move first. Kowalski, keep us in a defensive posture but ready to jump to FTL if things go sideways." The bridge crew exchanged glances, uncertainty written across their faces. They'd followed him into hell without question, but now they were in uncharted territory, waiting to see if humanity's first contact would end in peace or extinction. Harrison caught Walsh's eye, saw the question forming there. "Speak freely, Lieutenant Commander," Harrison said. Walsh stood, moving closer to the command chair, his voice low enough that only Harrison could hear. "Sir, with respect, what the hell are we doing? We hurt them, yes, but they could still overwhelm us if they commit fully. Shouldn't we be looking for an exit strategy?" "An exit strategy to where?" Harrison replied quietly. "They know where Earth is now. If we run, they'll follow, and next time they'll come prepared for what we can do." "No, Walsh. We rolled the dice the moment we fired that first salvo. Now we see if our gamble pays off." Before Walsh could respond, the tactical display erupted with new contacts. Harrison's blood turned to ice as he watched dozens of new signatures appear at the edge of sensor range, ships dropping out of FTL with the kind of precision that spoke to military discipline and overwhelming force. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered on the bridge. "That's another fleet." Harrison's jaw tightened. He'd miscalculated. The aliens hadn't been here to conquer. They'd been the advance scouts, and now the real military force had arrived to punish humanity's audacity. He opened his mouth to order a fighting retreat, to at least give his crew a chance at survival, when Walsh's voice cut through the mounting panic. "Sir, wait. Look at their signatures. Those aren't hierarchy vessels. The power output is all wrong, and their hull configurations are completely different." Rodriguez's console lit up like a Christmas tree. "Incoming transmission from the new fleet, sir. They're identifying themselves as the Kethrin Coalition, and they're requesting permission to enter the engagement zone. The main screen flickered, revealing a creature that looked nothing like the elegant hierarchy commander. This alien was broader, with features that reminded Harrison uncomfortably of a predator, all sharp angles and teeth visible even through what passed for a diplomatic expression. "Human vessel," it growled, the translator rendering its voice as something between gravel and thunder. "I am War Captain Thorak of the Kethrin Coalition. We have been monitoring this engagement with considerable interest. The hierarchy has claimed this sector as their exclusive domain for expansion, but we dispute their authority. Your resistance has provided us with an opportunity." Harrison's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications, but he kept his expression neutral. "An opportunity for what, War Captain?" Thorak's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile or a threat display. "The hierarchy speaks of guidance and civilization, but they are conquerors dressed in diplomatic language. They have subjugated 17 species by presenting submission as the only logical choice. You are the first to bloody their nose rather than bow. This changes the political calculus considerably." On the tactical display, Harrison watched the hierarchy fleet shifting nervously, clearly as surprised by this new development as his crew. The Kethrin fleet was smaller than the hierarchy force, maybe 30 ships to the aliens' remaining 43. But their vessels radiated power in a way that suggested they'd been built for war rather than intimidation. "You're proposing an alliance," Harrison said, not bothering to phrase it as a question. "An alliance of convenience," Thorak corrected. "The hierarchy has grown fat on easy conquests. They need to be reminded that the galaxy is not theirs to distribute as they see fit. Stand with us, human, and we will ensure your species receives the respect you have earned with your defiance." It was tempting, dangerously so. With the Kethrin fleet supporting them, humanity would have protection, breathing room to develop their technology and take their place among the stars. But Harrison had spent too many years in military service to trust convenient offers made in the heat of battle. "And what do the Kethrin expect in return for this generous protection?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. Thorak's expression shifted, showing something that might have been approval. "Smart question. We would expect trade agreements, access to your system's resources on favorable terms, and the understanding that humanity would stand with the Coalition in future conflicts with the hierarchy." "So we'd be trading one master for another," Harrison said flatly, "just with better terms and the illusion of independence." The alien's eyes narrowed, but before it could respond, the hierarchy commander's face appeared in a split screen, crystalline features twisted with something approaching rage. "Do not listen to these savages, Captain Harrison. The Kethrin are warmongers and pirates who have rejected civilization. Align yourself with them, and you doom your species to endless conflict. We offer peace, stability, advancement beyond your primitive understanding." "At the cost of our sovereignty," Harrison shot back, "at the cost of becoming one more conquered species in your collection." "Guided species," the hierarchy commander corrected. "We do not conquer, we elevate. Within 3 generations, your people would have access to technology that would make your current vessels look like stone tools. Disease, poverty, conflict, all eliminated through our administration." Thorak snarled. "Administration? What a pleasant word for slavery. The hierarchy speaks of elevation while stripping away everything that makes a species unique, molding them into obedient copies of their crystalline perfection." Harrison looked between the 2 alien commanders, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. This wasn't just about the Defiant anymore, or even about winning a single battle. Every word spoken here would echo through humanity's future, defining how Earth would be seen by the galactic community. Make the wrong choice, and humanity would be locked into alliances and conflicts that could span centuries. I appreciate both your offers, Harrison said carefully, his tactical mind working overtime. But I'm just a ship captain, not a diplomat or a politician. I don't have the authority to commit humanity to alliances with species we met less than an hour ago. Then who does have this authority? Thorak demanded. We do not have time for your primitive bureaucratic processes. The hierarchy will not remain passive forever. Harrison felt a cold smile spreading across his face. The same expression that had preceded some of his most audacious tactical decisions. That's the beautiful thing about humanity, War Captain. We don't have a single authority who speaks for our entire species. We're fractious, argumentative, and we can barely agree on anything, which means any deal you want to make will require negotiating with multiple governments, corporate entities, and independent colonies, all of whom will have their own agendas and demands. The silence that followed was profound. Both alien commanders stared at him with expressions that suggested they were reevaluating everything they thought they knew about human civilization. You're saying your species has no unified leadership? The hierarchy commander asked, something like horror creeping into its voice. Not in the way you're thinking, Harrison confirmed. We have the United Earth government, sure, but the Martian Confederation considers itself independent. The Belt colonies operate under their own charter, and the Jupiter stations maintain they're a sovereign collective. Getting all of them to agree on anything more complex than aliens are real would take months of negotiation. Thorak's predatory expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. You were telling us that your species made first contact, engaged in combat with a superior force, and did so without unified command authority? Who authorized your aggressive response? Harrison's smile widened. I did. That's another beautiful thing about humanity. We give our commanders the authority to make decisions in the field, to adapt to circumstances without waiting for orders from distant bureaucrats who don't understand the situation. The revelation seemed to shake both alien commanders in ways that weapons fire hadn't. The hierarchy commander's crystalline features shifted through expressions that the translator couldn't quite capture, while Thorak's predatory grin widened into something that looked almost feral. You gave a single warship commander the authority to determine your species' first contact protocols? The hierarchy commander asked, and Harrison detected something new in its voice. Not contempt or anger, but genuine confusion, as if the concept violated some fundamental law of civilization. What if you had made the wrong decision? What if your aggression had doomed your entire species? Harrison leaned forward in his command chair. And when he spoke, every member of his bridge crew heard the iron conviction that had carried them through 3 years of impossible situations. Then I would have doomed us fighting rather than living on our knees. That's the difference between humanity and whatever sanitized, guideline-following species you've been conquering for the past few centuries. We'd rather burn down the galaxy than let someone else dictate our future. Walsh shot him a look that was equal parts admiration and concern, probably wondering if Harrison had just declared war on behalf of the entire human race. But the captain kept his eyes locked on the split screen, watching the alien commanders process his words. Thorak broke the silence first, his gravelly laugh echoing across the bridge. By the blood of the first hunt, I like these humans. Hierarchy? You chose poorly when you selected this species for subjugation. They have teeth, and they're not afraid to use them. They have ignorance and bravado, the hierarchy commander countered, but some of the certainty had drained from its voice. Captain Harrison, you speak of sovereignty as though it is worth the cost of technological stagnation, of remaining vulnerable to every threat the galaxy contains. Do you have any conception of what exists beyond your tiny solar system? The predator species that would view your worlds as feeding grounds? The stellar phenomena that could sterilize your planets without warning? The hierarchy has maintained peace across thousands of systems for millennia. Peace through subjugation isn't peace, Harrison replied. It's just delayed conflict. Every species you've guided is a powder keg waiting for someone to light the fuse. How many of your conquered races are happy with their elevation? How many smile while planning rebellion? The hierarchy commander's silence was answer enough. Thorak's laugh rumbled again, deeper and more satisfied. The human sees clearly what you pretend not to understand, the Kethran war captain said. Your empire is built on the arrogance of assumed superiority. You believe your technology and your numbers make you untouchable. But empires fall, hierarchy. They always fall, usually from rot within. Harrison watched the tactical display as both alien fleets maintained their positions, neither willing to make the first move while this three-way standoff continued. His crew worked quietly at their stations, keeping the Defiant ready for combat, while their captain engaged in the kind of high-stakes diplomacy that could reshape human history. War Captain Thorak, Harrison said, shifting his attention to the Kethran commander. You speak as though the hierarchy is your enemy, but you're offering humanity the same thing they are. Protection in exchange for subordination. The terms might be different, but the fundamental relationship is the same. Thorak's expression shifted, showing something that might have been respect. You are not as naive as I assumed, human. Yes, the Coalition would expect your species to contribute to our strength, but we do not demand homogeneity. The Coalition is composed of 17 species, each maintaining their own cultures, governments, and military forces. We unite for mutual defense and shared profit, not because some elder race decided we needed guidance. And if humanity wanted to leave this coalition, Harrison pressed, if we decided your alliance no longer served our interests? The Kethran war captain's teeth showed fully now, and Harrison couldn't tell if it was a smile or a threat. Then you would leave, though the process would involve negotiation regarding shared resources and territorial boundaries. We are not the hierarchy, Captain. We do not believe we have the right to dictate the fate of species capable of defending themselves. Harrison sat back, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. The choice before him wasn't really a choice at all, not in the traditional sense. He couldn't commit humanity to either alliance, not with any legitimate authority. But what he could do was buy time. Establish humanity as something other than a victim waiting to be absorbed into someone else's empire. Here's what's going to happen, Harrison said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty that had made him legendary among the fleet. The Defiant is going to return to Earth to report on first contact. We're going to tell our various governments about both the hierarchy and the Kethran coalition, about your offers and your threats and everything we've witnessed here today. And then? The hierarchy commander asked. Then humanity will take whatever time we need to make our own decision about our place in the galaxy, Harrison continued. During that time, this system is off-limits to both your factions. No military vessels, no scouts. No convenient accidents that result in one of your fleets establishing a presence in our territory. Thorak's laugh was sharp and short. You think you can dictate terms to us? You have one ship, human, damaged from combat and outgunned by either of our fleets. One ship that bloodied the nose of your hierarchy friends, Harrison countered. One ship that fought 47 vessels and lived to tell about it. And more importantly, one ship that's currently transmitting everything that's happened here on every frequency known to human science. By now, every listening post in the solar system has picked up our signal. They know about you, about the hierarchy, about the Kethran coalition. They know we were attacked and that we fought back. He paused, letting that sink in before delivering his final point. Which means if you destroy the Defiant now, you won't be eliminating a problem. You'll be creating a martyr. Humanity will unite in ways we never have before, And every ship we build from this moment forward will be designed with one purpose, making sure no alien fleet ever dictates terms to us again. The silence that followed was absolute. Even his own crew had stopped their work to stare at him, probably wondering if their captain had lost his mind or achieved some kind of tactical enlightenment. Harrison kept his expression neutral, but inside he was calculating odds and probabilities, trying to determine if he'd just saved humanity or signed their death warrant. The hierarchy commander spoke first, its crystalline features settling into something that might have been resignation. You are giving us no choice but to withdraw and allow your species time to develop without our guidance. This is a mistake, Captain Harrison. The galaxy is more dangerous than you comprehend, and your bravado will not protect you from threats you cannot imagine. Maybe, Harrison agreed, but it'll be our mistake to make, our threat to face. That's worth more to us than any amount of protection you could offer. Thorak studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. Very well, human. The Coalition will respect your territorial boundaries while you deliberate. But understand this. The hierarchy will not remain passive forever. They will seek to undermine your unity, to position themselves as the inevitable choice when threats emerge that you cannot handle alone. When that time comes, remember that the Coalition offered alliance between equals, not subjugation dressed in diplomatic language. I'll remember, Harrison promised. Both offers, and the circumstances under which they were made. The hierarchy commander's image flickered. We will be watching, Captain. When your species realizes the futility of isolation, when the first predator species discovers your worlds, the hierarchy will be ready to provide the guidance you currently reject. We are patient. We have waited centuries before. We can wait a few more decades. Both transmissions cut simultaneously, leaving the main screen dark. The alien fleets began to withdraw, moving with the careful precision of military forces disengaging from a potential combat zone. Harrison watched them go on the tactical display, tracking their movements until they jumped to FTL, leaving the Defiant alone in the dark. The bridge erupted into cheers, his crew celebrating their impossible survival. But Harrison sat quietly in his command chair, watching the empty space where two alien fleets had been minutes before, and wondered if he'd just saved humanity or merely delayed the inevitable. Sir, Walsh said, appearing at his elbow with an expression of awed disbelief. That was either the bravest or the most insane thing I've ever witnessed. Possibly both. Harrison allowed himself a tired smile. Let's get home, Walsh. We've got a lot of explaining to do, and I have a feeling the various Earth governments are going to have some strong opinions about my diplomatic technique. The journey home was a mixture of grim silence and tentative celebration aboard the Defiant. The crew, exhausted but alive, clung to whatever threads of hope they could find in the wake of their astonishing stand against overwhelming odds. But Captain William Harrison sat alone in his ready room, staring at the communications console as the endless void rolled past outside the viewport. He replayed every moment of the encounter in his mind. The arrogance of the hierarchy, the brutal candor of the Kethrin Coalition, the impossible gamble he'd made with the lives of everyone under his command. He'd gone toe-to-toe with alien empires and lived to see Earth again, but the price of survival was only just becoming clear. Captain, Commander Walsh entered hesitantly, breaking through the fog of Harrison's thoughts. We're receiving encrypted transmissions from Earth. The political response is intense. Harrison didn't need specifics. After what they'd done, Earth's fragile coalition of governments would erupt in debate. Some factions would call for celebration, others for caution, and some would blame Harrison for recklessly provoking alien powers. We're a species divided as much by ideology as by planet, Harrison muttered. This is going to be a mess. Walsh nodded grimly. The United Earth Council is convening an emergency session. They want a full report as soon as we dock. Military leaders are demanding a change in command over concerns about provoking galactic powers without a unified strategy. Harrison leaned back, rubbing his eyes. They want a scapegoat. Given how much we just shook the galaxy's balance, I won't argue if they want to make it me. The implications weighed heavily. Was he a hero or a harbinger of war? The truth likely teetered somewhere between. For everyone on Earth, the Defiant's return was the dawn of a new age, a fractured species staring without certainty into a galaxy far more dangerous and complex than they'd imagined. News broadcasts were flooded with reports of alien fleets and the blurred lines between savior and conqueror. Harrison knew the real battle was just beginning. Neither the hierarchy nor the Kithran coalition's promises could be trusted fully. Both sought to claim humanity, albeit in wildly different ways. He thought of his crew, men and women whose loyalty had transcended fear, who'd stared down impossible odds because they trusted their captain. They were the true proof that humanity's strength wasn't in technology or alliances, but in stubborn will and resilience. The corridor outside his ready room buzzed with the quiet tension of people grappling with an uncertain future. Harrison stood, moving to join his crew. There would be long days ahead, battles fought in boardrooms and council chambers, not in the vacuum of space. But one thing was sure. Humanity was no longer a secret, no longer a corner of the universe to be ignored or dominated without consequence. And Harrison? He'd keep fighting, on the front lines whether space or diplomacy demanded it, to ensure Earth's place was earned, not handed over on anyone else's terms. The Defiant had been dry-docked for weeks when Captain William Harrison finally set foot on Earth again, a planet buzzing not with the usual calm of routine civilian life, but with electric energy that felt like the whole world held its breath. The reception was both grand and volatile. News crews clamored for a statement while government officials exchanged guarded glances, weighed words, and prepared strategies that would dictate humanity's future. Harrison could feel the weight of every eye and expectation. To some, he was a hero who'd stood up to impossible odds and shattered humanity's isolation. To others, a reckless soldier who had dragged Earth into cosmic rivalry before they were ready. Despite the roar outside, inside the command center where the United Earth Council convened, tension saturated the air like thick smoke. The council chambers had never seen such divergence of opinion, with factions pushing for military buildup, cautious diplomacy, or even outright isolationism. "You gambled our future on a battle with unknown forces," the council chairwoman said, her voice icy and sharp. "Your actions may have bought us time, but at what cost? What if the Kethran coalition or hierarchy decide to exploit your defiance against us all?" Harrison swallowed the burn of the council's questions, but met her gaze unflinchingly. "Better to face those threats on our feet than on our knees. The Defiant's victory showed the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated. That kind of reputation can be as powerful a deterrent as any alliance." Some members nodded, others bristled. The debate spiraled, exposing fissures within humanity's fragile unity. Some leaders saw the hierarchy as a necessary evil, a stable order in a violent galaxy. Others saw the Kethran coalition's promise of mutual respect as humanity's path toward true sovereignty. Many were paralyzed, unwilling to choose between uneasy allegiances. But Harrison knew what mattered most wasn't immediate decisions or political posturing. It was the undeniable fact that humanity had awakened at last. He found himself wandering late one night on the docks, where military and civilian spacecraft mingled, ships being repaired, refitted, and dreamed about for the future. Amid the quiet hum of machinery and far-off chatter, Kowalski approached, her eyes tired but resolute. "Captain," she said softly, "they're pushing hard for a military expansion. More ships, more weapons. If the Council decides to militarize fully, do you think it'll keep us safe, or push us into the constant shadow of war?" Harrison looked out at the newly built frigates and corvettes sheltering under the massive orbital docks. "There's no simple answer. We'll need strength, no doubt. But more than that, we need unity. And wisdom. You can have all the weapons and ships you want, but if we're still divided and suspicious of each other, none of that matters." Her gaze sharpened. "And the Kethrin and hierarchy?" "They'll test us," Harrison replied. "Both want to see if humanity is strong enough to stand without breaking apart. Their arrival exposed our weaknesses as much as our strengths." When the morning committee that oversaw Earth defense convened, Harrison addressed the assembled military leaders and scientists with a singular clarity honed from 3 decades of war and peace. "The galaxy outside is bigger and crueler than anything we've known," he said. "Our victory was real, but it was just the opening move. Whether we align with the Kethrin Coalition, negotiate with the hierarchy, or forge our own path, it starts here, with how we see ourselves and what we're willing to fight for." The faces around him ranged from grim determination to skeptical uncertainty. Humanity had fought wars on Earth that had shattered families, loyalty, and trust. Now they faced a war for survival and identity on a galactic scale. Back in his quarters, Harrison sifted through reports of alien technology gleaned from salvaged hierarchy vessels, studies of Kethrin communication tactics, and simulations that projected probable conflicts years into the future. The projections were sobering. Within decades, humans would face threats that dwarfed even the hierarchy's claims. Yet, amid the data and politics, Harrison held a stubborn spark untouched by politics or fear: the human spirit, the raw will to survive and dominate adversity. He knew that above all else, the true power of humanity was their unpredictability, their refusal to accept the universe as a deterministic outcome. One night, standing outside the observation deck with a few trusted officers, Harrison watched the stars and the gleaming hull of the Defiant far below. "Do you really think this will work?" asked Lieutenant Commander Walsh, voice low. Harrison didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured towards the endless black tapestry above. "They don't know us yet, what we're capable of when pushed. That's our edge. We'll make alliances when it's the right move, fight wars when they're forced on us, but we'll never let anyone write our story for us." Kowalski's voice cut through the moment. "And what about us, sir? The ones who fought, the ones who lived through hell and came back? What's our future if Earth fractures under pressure?" "Then we'll fight to hold it together," Harrison said quietly, "because the only thing worse than being conquered is letting fear tear you apart from within." The officers fell silent, each reflecting on the cost and weight of the moment. Harrison knew the days ahead would test every fiber of humanity's resilience. But for now, in the midst of uncertainty, he allowed himself a rare moment of resolve. The war for Earth's future had truly begun. The Defiant had become more than just a battleship. It was a symbol, a beacon of human resilience and defiance that mocked the cold expanse of the galaxy. Captain William Harrison stood in the newly established United Earth Command Center, a sprawling complex built in response to the newfound threats and opportunities beyond Earth's orbit. Every major government and military faction was represented here, and every meeting carried the weight of humanity's precarious future. Harrison felt the rough leather of the chair beneath his fingers as he prepared to speak before the assembled council. The room was dense with anticipation and unspoken fears. After weeks of crisis, victories, political wrangling, and strategic planning, humanity had finally agreed on one thing. Survival demanded unity, or there would be no future at all. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but steely with conviction. We stand at a crossroads unlike any in human history. Our victories against the hierarchy's advanced scouts were not merely military, they were spiritual. We showed the galaxy that humanity will not be bowed, nor bargained away without a fight. He paused, letting the words settle into the room's thick silence. But fighting alone will no longer be enough. We need knowledge, alliances, strength, and above all, the will to carve a place for ourselves on our own terms. The Kethran coalition offers a path of mutual defense without domination. The hierarchy offers advancement, but at the price of subjugation. Both are risks, both are possibilities. A murmur ran through the members. Harrison knew each delegate weighed their fears differently. Some couldn't look past the promise of safety the hierarchy offered. Others recoiled at the thought of imperial dominance. Still, others saw opportunity in the Kethran way, despite the risks of becoming entangled in more conflicts. The captain let the moment stretch, gaze resting on the youngest representatives, the future generations who would inherit the consequences of today's decisions. Our job is not only to decide who we trust in the stars, but to prepare humanity to stand on its own feet, no matter what challenges come. Behind him, through the expansive transparent viewport, vast stars gleamed in the darkness, silent witnesses to the choices being made below. Days turned into weeks. Earth accelerated efforts to build a new fleet inspired by the Defiant, a fleet designed not simply for defense, but for a future in the stars where humans would stake their claim as equals or foes. Harrison traveled between Earth and orbital command stations, mediating between politics, military necessities, and the relentless push of advancing technology. He argued passionately for unity and foresaw the fractures beneath the surface, old Earth rivalries, mistrust among colonies, and the creeping fear that external threats might be used as tools for internal power grabs. One evening on the bridge of his new flagship, the Resolute, Harrison stood alone, looking past the stars that stretched beyond human reach. He thought of the hierarchy's warnings, the Kethran's offers, and the tens of thousands who would train under his command, the men and women who might pay the ultimate price. He understood now that humanity's true battle was not just to survive alien threats, but to master themselves, to forge unity in the crucible of fear and opportunity. With a steady hand, he activated the ship's interstellar communications array, transmitting a message to every world and station that would listen. "This is Captain William Harrison. The days of Earth's isolation are over. We have faced monsters at our doorstep and stood tall. Now, we join the stars not as prey or toys, but as a proud, unyielding species, humanity. Our future will be fought for, earned, and written by our hands alone." The message rippled across space, carried by every frequency, every channel, reaching millions who would carry Harrison's words forward. The galaxy watched with wary eyes, and for the first time, humanity was listening back. This was their first contact, a beginning written in fire and steel, with battleships blazing against the void, but more than that, with a spirit that no fleet, no conqueror could ever extinguish. Humanity had unleashed its power, and the universe would never be the same again. Captain William Harrison's journey from solitary warship commander to the reluctant symbol of humanity's fierce defiance against the cosmos forms the core of this story. First contact, aliens stunned by Earth's battleship unleashing its power, HFY. The narrative unfolds in 8 parts, chronicling humanity's gritty first encounter with 2 alien factions, the Hierarchy and the Kethran Coalition, and the ensuing political and military upheaval on Earth. Harrison, a deeply flawed but emotionally intense leader shaped by years of brutal combat, embodies raw human will and stubbornness. Facing overwhelming odds, he chooses aggression over submission, striking a symbolic blow that reverberates throughout the galaxy. This act challenges alien assumptions about humanity's place in the universe and forces rival powers to reconsider their plans. The battle aboard the UES Defiant displays humanity's underdog tenacity. Despite facing a technologically superior and numerically dominant enemy force, Harrison's tactical ingenuity and indomitable spirit turn the tide, disrupting the hierarchy's fleet, stunning alien commanders with humanity's audacity, and drawing attention from the warring Kethran coalition who offer uneasy alliance terms. Back on Earth, the story explores the raw human conflicts, political divisions, fear, ambition, and hope, triggered by the revelation that Earth is no longer alone. The fragmented world governments wrestle with decisions that will define humanity's future. Submission to alien guidance, alliance for mutual defense, or forging an independent path fraught with peril. Harrison's character arc is grounded in realism. He navigates tactical choices, diplomacy, and the immense burden of leadership without illusions or forced heroism. His actions provoke both admiration and condemnation, reflecting the complex reality of a species torn between survival instincts and the desire for sovereignty. The story's drama intensifies through themes of power, betrayal, survival against impossible odds, and humanity's fierce refusal to be conquered or tamed by alien empires. It eschews ideological preaching, focusing instead on raw human emotions, mistrust, and the gritty details of political and military maneuvering amid an existential crisis. Visual imagery accompanying the story would include the Defiant's sleek, battle-hardened hull blazing through dark space. Terrifying and elegant alien warships radiating overwhelming power, and the tense standoff between rival fleets, underscoring the scale and stakes of first contact battles. In sum, this story captures the humanity fuck yeah spirit by spotlighting a flawed but fiercely determined male protagonist who embodies humanity's chaotic, relentless spirit in the face of cosmic threats, united by conflict, raw emotion, and the will to define their own destiny rather than be subsumed.